He had 11.8 million subscribers, a veterinary practice, a clothing company, a 350-acre Texas resort, and one of the most watched firearms channels in the history of the internet. And then one afternoon in January 2025, he stood in front of a camera and said he was done, and listed the ranch for sale the same week. His name is Matt Carriker. He built Demolition Ranch from a bored vet student with a camera into a platform institution. By the end of this video, you will understand why the discovery that ended everything had nothing to do with guns, and everything to do with what he found when he stopped filming long enough to look at his own life. Matt Carriker did not grow up dreaming about YouTube. He grew up in Texas, around firearms, around animals, around the kind of blue-collar common sense that comes from spending your formative years somewhere with enough open land to actually do things with it. He went to Texas A&M, one of the most respected veterinary programs in the country, and earned his degree. He became a licensed veterinarian. That was the plan. That was the path. But somewhere between treating animals during the day and shooting guns on weekends, Matt picked up a camera. The year was 2011. The internet was a different place. YouTube was still wild enough that a guy in Texas asking, "What happens if I shoot this with a top 50 cal?" could find an audience without a production crew or a media deal. The early Demolition Ranch videos were exactly that: low production, high curiosity, and completely genuine. Matt was not performing a character. He was just a guy who happened to be a vet during business hours and a firearms enthusiast the rest of the time. That combination, the professional credentials sitting alongside the backyard chaos, was unlike anything else on the platform, and the audience felt it immediately. Within his first couple of years, Demolition Ranch was pulling subscriber numbers that most creators spend their entire careers chasing. He was not gaming the algorithm. He was not pivoting to whatever was trending. He was shooting .50 caliber rounds through kitchen appliances in a Texas field and filming the results. That was it. That was enough. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. What most people do not realize about Matt Carriker is that Demolition Ranch was never his only project. It was not even the one he was most emotionally invested in. While the main channel was growing, racking up views, building what he called the Demolition, pulling in sponsorship deals that most people in his niche could barely dream of, Matt was also running Vet Ranch on the side. The concept was simple and genuinely moving, a channel where he documented treating animals that had been abandoned, injured, or surrendered, often performing procedures that would otherwise mean euthanasia. He funded those treatments himself. No ads, no charge to the owners who brought the animals to him. Just a vet with a camera doing the work because the work mattered. Vet Ranch grew, slowly, then significantly. And it gave Matt a dimension that Demolition Ranch never could. Proof that the same man blowing holes in cars on one channel was also saving stray dogs and feral cats on another. That duality was not a brand strategy. It was who he actually was. Then there was Off the Ranch, a family vlog channel where Matt let cameras into his home life, his wife Meredith, his kids, the day-to-day reality of managing a veterinary practice, a media operation, and a piece of Texas land that had slowly become one of the most recognizable filming locations on the platform. 3 channels, a vet practice, a family, and a growing collection of equipment, vehicles, and machinery that would have made most small armies jealous. It looked like success from the outside, and it was, but it was also a machine that required constant feeding. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me because this next part is why the whole story matters. YouTube's relationship with firearms content did not collapse overnight. It eroded, quietly then quickly. Starting around 2018 and accelerating in the years that followed, YouTube began adjusting its policies around gun-related content. Certain types of videos, anything that could be perceived as instructional around modifications, sales, or acquisition, became subject to demonetization, age restriction, or outright removal. For most creators in the space, this was a significant problem. For Matt, it was complicated in a different way. Demolition Ranch was not an instructional channel. Matt was not teaching people how to do anything. He was shooting things: fridges, cars, body armor, bulletproof glass, the occasional piece of furniture. The entertainment value was spectacle, not instruction. But the algorithm and the policy teams do not always make that distinction. And as the platform tightened its rules around firearms as a category, channels like Demolition Ranch found themselves navigating a landscape that was genuinely less hospitable than the one they had built their audience on. What made this harder for Matt was that he had spent years building businesses layered on top of the channel, and those businesses were now tied to an uncertain platform. Sponsorship deals depend on consistent monetization. Consistent monetization depends on platform goodwill. And platform goodwill was, to put it plainly, becoming less reliable in the firearms space. Then there was the external pressure. Gun violence in America generates news cycles. News cycles generate platform pressure. And creators in the firearms space, even those with no connection to any specific event, found themselves swept into conversations they had not asked to be part of. Matt Carriker was not a political creator. He never used his platform to advocate for specific legislation or to engage in the debates that dominate that space. But his content existed in a category that was increasingly scrutinized from the outside. He never talked about this publicly in the way most people expected, until the announcement changed everything. Before Matt ever posted a retirement video, there was a signal. Most people who followed the channel caught it. Most people who followed this story stopped there and missed the real weight of it. In February 2024, almost a full year before the retirement announcement, Matt posted a video on Off the Ranch titled "Closing Down the Business Life Update." It pulled over 3 million views. In it, he announced that Link Active, his clothing brand, was closing. Final sale. All items going. Men's inventory sold out within minutes of the video going live. Link Active was not just a side project, it was a significant revenue stream and a genuine business that Matt had built with the intention of it lasting. Closing it was not a casual decision, and the video itself had a tone that, in retrospect, reads as a man who had already started doing the internal accounting, looking at everything on his plate and asking, with genuine honesty, which pieces were worth continuing to carry. The comments on that video were full of people who sensed something bigger was coming. Some said so directly. Matt acknowledged the difficulty of the decision without dramatizing it, which was exactly his style, straightforward, a little self-deprecating, genuinely transparent. But the clothing brand was one piece. The veterinary practice was still running. The channels were still uploading. The ranch was still operating as a filming location and, by this point, as Desperado Ranch, a resort and entertainment property that hosted events, range days, and experiences for fans and outside groups alike. The machine was still running, but a gear had already come loose. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. The video was posted on a Tuesday. "I'm quitting YouTube. I'm selling the ranch." No elaborate setup, no slow tease. The title said exactly what the video delivered. Matt walked through it calmly. He had achieved every goal he had set. He had built a channel that reached more people than most television networks. He had turned a property in the Texas Hill Country into one of the most recognized filming locations in the history of the platform. He had 2.5 billion views. He had done what he set out to do. And then he said the part that landed differently than any subscriber count or revenue figure could. He talked about his kids, about being present, about the reality that the years when his children are young are not years he can get back. He said he had been thinking about what he did not want to look back on, and that trading his children's childhood for bigger videos and bigger numbers was at the top of that list. The video pulled nearly 5 million views in the weeks that followed. The comments were not the typical mixture of argument and noise that YouTube sections usually generate. They were unusually consistent. People said they understood. People said he made the right call. A notable number of people, creators included, said it made them think about their own situations. Matt also confirmed what the rumors had been quietly circulating for months. The 350-acre Desperado Ranch property was being listed for sale. The land where thousands of Demolition Ranch videos had been filmed, where the resort operation had run, where the brand had been physically anchored, it was going on the market. The number that came next, nobody who followed this channel expected it. Multiple outlets reported the ranch was listed at approximately $15 million. A 350-acre hill country property with a shooting range, outbuildings, and the kind of infrastructure that had been built to support a media operation was always going to carry a significant price. But the figure still landed hard for a fan base that had watched Matt film in that field with a consumer camera and a borrowed truck before he had any of it. The listing was symbolic in a way that went beyond the transaction. When you sell the physical location where you made something, you are not just moving property, you are closing a door that cannot be reopened in the same form. Even if the videos stay on the channel, and they do, the archive remains. The living version of Demolition Ranch, the one where something new could still happen, ended with that listing. The final Demolition Ranch video went up on March 29, 2025. It was titled, "Thank You for Everything." It ran just over 30 minutes. More than 4.5 million people watched it. Simultaneously, Off the Ranch published a video called The End. Both channels went quiet after that date. Vet Ranch 2. 3 channels, more than a decade of content, and a community that had called itself the Demolition. All of it stopped uploading on the same weekend. What Matt did instead of keeping going is the part nobody talks about. Here is the question that the comments kept asking in the weeks after the announcement. And here is the answer they never got until now. What actually ended Demolition Ranch was not the platform. It was not the policy changes, or the demonetization pressure, or the clothing brand closing, or the algorithm shift. Those were all real. All of them applied genuine pressure, but none of them would have stopped Matt Carriker if the underlying reason for continuing had still been there. The discovery was simpler than anyone expected, and it was internal. Somewhere in the timeline, and it is hard to pinpoint exactly when, because these realizations do not come with timestamps, Matt understood something about himself that the channel had been obscuring. He did not need more. Not more views, not more subscribers, not more revenue, not more land or equipment or content. He had built past every goal he had ever set, and the engine that had driven all of it, the genuine curiosity, the need to see what happened next, had reached a kind of natural completion. That is a specific and unusual position for a creator to find themselves in. Most people stop because the numbers go down, because something goes wrong, because the platform takes something from them. Matt stopped because the numbers had gone as high as he had imagined they could, and he was still standing there asking himself what the point was. He had been filming his family for years on Off the Ranch. He had watched his kids grow up on camera. And at some point, the camera stopped being something that added to that experience and started being something that stood between him and it. That was the discovery. Not a scandal, not a controversy, not a single event. The realization that he had already won, and that keeping the game going was costing him the thing he had actually been playing for. As of mid-2026, Matt Carriker has not returned to YouTube. The channels remain up, the archive intact, the videos still accessible, the Demolition still commenting on videos from years ago as if they are happening in real time. He has maintained a presence on Instagram, giving occasional glimpses of life after the platform, time on the ranch, with his family, with animals. The veterinary side of his life appears to have continued in some form. The professional identity that preceded Demolition Ranch by design was always going to outlast it. The Desperado Ranch property had been listed, and the eventual sale of that land, if and when it finalizes, will be the last physical chapter of a story that was always bigger than the individual videos. What Matt Carriker walked away with is harder to quantify than any subscriber count. Time, on his own terms, before his children were grown. That is not the conclusion most people in his position reach. Most people keep going because the platform rewards continuation and punishes absence. Matt looked at that incentive structure, understood it completely, and chose something else. That is the ending. And for a channel built around what happens when you apply overwhelming force to something, it turns out the answer, when you apply it to a career, is that some things do not break. Some things just finish. The story of Demolition Ranch is not really about guns. It is about what a person builds when they are genuinely curious, and what they discover when they stop to look at what the building has cost them. Matt Carriker spent 14 years making something that worked, and then had the clarity to walk away from it before it stopped being worth making. Going forward, the Demolition Ranch archive stays up. The land may sell. The Demolition will keep watching old videos. And Matt, by all indications, is exactly where he said he wanted to be. Present for the part of his life that the camera could not have captured any better than he was already living it. The question for anyone who watched Demolition Ranch is this: do you think Matt made the right call walking away from 11.8 million subscribers at the peak of his channel? Or is that a decision you could never have made yourself?